Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. I'm so excited today because I'm going to be reviewing J.R. Tolkien's The Fall of Gondolin. This is the book here that I have, and this is the paperback version. This was edited by Christopher Tolkien, who is the son of J.R. Tolkien, and he unfortunately passed away like a year or two ago. So I've been really sort of motivated to finally begin the Tolkien works outside of Lord of the Rings, because this is one of my favorite like fantasy stories that I've read in a very long time, because this is something that I've always wondered about, is the city of Gondolin. Because for those who don't know, this book is all about the first, and well, not really, I guess it is the first elf city, but this was the greatest elf city that ever existed during the first age of Middle Earth. And it was founded by, I'm trying to remember the name off my, it's not Nagathrond, but it's, goodness, of course, I had the name in my head, and the moment I try to think of it, I forgot. But it's all about the founding of the city and sort of the entire history of it. And the way that Christopher Tolkien edits it is that he provides commentary and gives us all of the sort of samples and versions of the story that Tolkien had written for this story. And it's really fascinating seeing how it changes throughout time, because the first time he wrote about this event of the fall of Gondolin was in World War One, when he was in the trenches, and he thought of this story as sort of the first story within this imaginary world that he was building. And it was really fascinating to read, because there's a lot of references to Gondolin and Lord of the Rings. And I've read Lord of the Rings about 3 or 4 times in my life now. 2 times on audiobook and twice on physical reading. And I love Lord of the Rings, but I've always wondered about the events surrounding Gondolin, because we know how powerful that the elves are, especially in the First Age. They are total badasses. They fight many different kind of creatures, and there's a lot more of them, because during this war, and I don't know if I need to give a spoiler warning or anything, but this story just has so much going on that I don't think it'll affect anyone's enjoyment. And the title of the book is called The Fall of Gondolin. So the entire story is building up to the loss by the elves against Morgoth, who is the original Dark Lord of Middle-earth that Sauron served, actually, and then became the new Dark Lord once Morgoth was defeated, which I don't really know anything about those events, because the Fall of Gondolin is not where Morgoth was defeated. It was where the elves were defeated, and they were forced to move. But we get this 2 very fascinating characters named Tuor and also Turgon. I think Turgon's the one who founded the city, but he's the father of a lot of the sort of major elves within the series. And we also have Vorenway. She's a elf queen who gives birth to, I think, Feanor, and a lot of these names have escaped my brain, because there's just so many names to keep track of in this story. But it's really fascinating getting all of these characters, because you hear about them a lot in Lord of the Rings and a very tiny bit in The Hobbit, but I really enjoyed reading the events as they went on, because I knew going in, I mean, the title is called The Fall of Gondolin, so you know they're going to lose. And it's really interesting to get the perspectives of Tuor and Turgon and a lot of these major characters. And we even see Legolas in this story, which was a lot of fun. He's part of the battle, and I don't know if he's doing any of those badass stunts that he did in the movies, but I'd like to imagine that he was. But what's really cool about this story is that it starts off with Tuor trying to find the city of Gondolin, because it's a very well-kept secret among the elves, because it is the major city. And during the entire story, we get these whisperings about how I think the guy's name is Magellan, or maybe Magellan, I don't know, but it's Magellan, I think is the name. But he is the one who eventually betrays the city and goes to Morgoth themselves and reveals where the city is. But it ends up that he basically already found the city, Morgoth did, because he's able to inhabit and possess many animals and bugs. So he took over crows. He took over a lot of different sort of little critters that could sort of help him to locate the city. And I really love sort of this build up of like what's going to happen when Morgoth finds the city. And it ends up that Magellan, he convinces him to create the dragons. So this is the first time that dragons are in Middle Earth, because one of the great advantages to Gondolin is its really high and strong walls and its fortifications. And so we get this really fascinating scene between Magellan and Morgoth, where Morgoth is like, yeah, we already kind of knew where the city was through my spy network, but what else can you tell me? And he gets this idea. He's like, oh, cross lizards with, birds and have them fly and have them be very powerful. And so he creates the first dragons, and there's this really amazing description of the elves celebrating like Hallows Eve or some major celebration. And they have this sort of festival of lights, and the lanterns are going up into the air. And they see this really powerful and intense red glow in the distance. And they have no idea that this means danger, so they cheer when they see this light. But very quickly they realize that it's basically the horizon on fire, and it's coming closer to the valley and the mountains that Gondolin is set at. And it's really cool getting this scene, because shortly after that, it ends up that there's also an army of Balrogs coming. So in Lord of the Rings, we only see one Balrog, and it defeats Gandalf, or we think it defeats Gandalf. It kills him by plunging him into the pit in Khazad-dûm. And in this story, and we know how dangerous Balrogs are, and so I did not realize that there were more Balrogs, especially during this time. So it was really cool as a Middle-earth lover to get many Balrogs, as much as 10 or 12 of them, marching together with the orcs and the dragons, because there's about 2 or 3 dragons at this point. And they're flying in, sort of lighting the city on fire. And we also have the Balrogs going in and killing a lot of people and killing the horses. And we have some pretty badass scenes of elves putting up a really good fight against some Balrogs and winning against Balrogs, which it took Gandalf many days to defeat the Balrogs. So we know, like, again, the elves during the First Age are total badasses and have a lot of skill. But at the end of the day, or at the end of the struggle, they lose. And so it's really cool to read this as someone who's always wondered about this majestic city. And boy, do we get more than enough descriptions about the city in this book. It is Tolkien we are talking about, where he spends the entire prologue of The Lord of the Rings discussing Hobbit politics and talking all about the environment of the Shire, and it's just really amazing. I love reading that chapter because it's like going back onto an adventure, sort of like reading Dragonmount, the prologue to Wheel of Time again for the first time. Like, every time I reread those 2 prologues, I think those are some of my favorite prologues in fantasy, are those 2. But every time I reread those, and especially of Lord of the Rings, it's like, oh man, here I go again on a Lord of the Rings, adventure, and I can't wait. And so after reading this, I was just so excited I am very excited to someday reread Lord of the Rings, but I also want to read The Fall of Numenor, which is the next book that I have on my shelf by Tolkien. And I think that one's going to be so much fun. I just really am excited for that one. I don't know about Numenor anywhere else as well, or I don't know it as much as I did not know about Gondolin before reading this book. So I'm very excited to read that book. I did watch season 1 of Rings of Power, but I don't think any of those are canon to the stories, so I assume that I'm going to be learning a lot during that book. But I just really enjoyed this book. I really love the death of Magellan as well, because he comes back to Gondolin, and he's fighting amongst everyone, and Tuor sees him, and Tuor grabs him and sort of just throws him because Magellan is trying to marry his wife, marry Tuor's wife. And it's really sort of a stressful scene to read, where he's taken Tuor's wife hostage and is sort of like, yeah, I'm going to marry her now. This was the price that I asked for, for my deception against you guys. This was my reward for telling them how to, breach the defenses. And so it was really cool to sort of get this scene and have him basically pick up Magellan, just throw him off the walls of Gondolin. Like, it was a very well-deserved death for that character. But the character of Tuor is just so fascinating as well. I really enjoyed reading about him. And he was just a really cool character, because he starts off wandering the hills around Gondolin. He's looking for the city. And I talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but I'll talk about it even more now. But he's looking for the city, and he runs into some elves who are like, who are you? What's your name? Like, where do you hail from? And they have this really tense sort of interrogation going on to see if they can trust him with the location of the city. And he ends up winning the trust, and he really helps them as a city to sort of continue and upholds the sort of values that the elves uphold, because he is not fully elvish. He's part human, part elf, I think. Or he's sort of like the original dwarf, which I think Tolkien called gnomes in this story. So he's not elvish, and he wins the trust and ends up becoming one of them because he is so loyal to the elves. He gives them a lot of value. He marries one of the elvish ladies there, and it's really great. I really love reading all his scenes. He has a really great romance with Veronwe, I think is her name. I just really enjoyed the characters of this story as well, and he even meets one of the gods of Middle-earth, which was really, really cool. And this edition specifically has a lot of artwork. And here's the god right here. There's an artwork. I hope you can see that, but it's like a sea god who is conjured by him. And they sort of have a really fascinating discussion, because the gods are not really that involved in Middle-earth by Lord of the Rings timeline. At this time, they were definitely more involved. I don't think the Maiar were there yet. I don't think we get anything with like Gandalf or Saruman or Radagast or the Blue Wizards, for example. Like, the wizards are not really mentioned in this story, so I assume that they came in afterwards or just were not part of this fight. But it's really fun too, because we see Legolas, and I know he's younger than Gandalf. Gandalf is like dozens of thousands of years old. But it's just really great. I really enjoyed the story. But I'm really excited to read Fall of Numenor next, which is all about the great human city and how it sort of sunk underwater. I don't really know the circumstances around it outside of the Rings of Power TV show, but it was really cool. So I think that's about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.